The sun was merciless that day. It burned across the wide, empty plains of New Mexico, swallowing everything in waves of heat. The dust shimmered like fire on the horizon, and even the crows had stopped flying. In the middle of that heat, a lone woman walked. Her feet were bare, red and raw from the blistering ground. In her trembling arms she carried a baby, no more than a few months old. The child's lips were dry, its small cries faint like the whisper of wind. Her name was Clara, a widow from the north who had lost everything, her home, her husband, her hope. The wagon train she'd joined was attacked weeks ago. Since then, she'd been walking, begging for help in every small town she passed, but no one wanted trouble. And no one wanted to take in a woman with a child. Her dress was torn, the color of earth and sweat. She kept whispering to the baby, "Just a little more, my love, just a little more." But the road stretched endlessly. Miles away, on a quiet ranch surrounded by silence and dry wind, Ethan Cole sat on his porch, sharpening his knife. He was a man of few words, tall, sun-worn, the kind of man who lived more with the land than with people. It had been 6 years since his wife died, and in that time, loneliness had become his closest friend. He had no one to talk to except his horse, Dusty, and the wind that whistled through the canyons. Each morning he'd wake before dawn, feed the cattle, fix fences, and watch the empty road that led through the valley. The same road he once took with his wife when they moved west for a new life. But that life had ended in silence. And today, that same road carried a shadow, faint at first, like a mirage in the heat. Ethan squinted. Something or someone was moving. He stood up slowly, shielding his eyes with his hand. What in God's name? It wasn't an animal. It was a woman, and she was carrying something. Ethan's chest tightened. He grabbed his hat, saddled Dusty, and rode out toward her. By the time he reached her, Clara had nearly collapsed. Her lips were cracked, her skin pale beneath the dirt. The baby had stopped crying and was limp in her arms. "Ma'am," Ethan shouted, jumping down from his horse. "Mom, you need to stop." She stumbled, almost falling, clutching the baby tight. Her eyes blinked in confusion. "Please, water. My baby." Ethan didn't waste a second. He took his canteen and pressed it to her lips. She drank, trembling, and then held the canteen to her baby's mouth. The little one made a weak sound, barely alive. Ethan's throat went dry. "You'll both die if you keep walking like this. Come on!" He lifted her carefully onto his horse, holding her steady. Dusty neighed, sensing the urgency. Ethan spoke softly. "Hold on, ma'am. My ranch ain't far." When they reached his cabin, the sky had turned orange with sunset. Ethan carried the woman inside, laid her gently on his old bed, and set the baby down beside her. He fetched cool water from the barrel, soaked a cloth, and wiped the dust from her face. She stirred faintly, whispering something he couldn't hear. The baby let out a weak cry, a good sign. Ethan smiled faintly. "That's right, little one. You're safe now." He warmed some milk on the stove, fed the child carefully with a cloth. Then he brought Clara a bowl of soup, the same soup he made for himself every night, simple but warm. When she finally opened her eyes again, hours later, she saw the dim glow of lantern light. Ethan was sitting near the door, cleaning his rifle. Her voice was hoarse. Where am I?" Ethan turned slowly. "You're safe, ma'am. Name's Ethan Cole. You're at my ranch, west of Fort Stanton." She tried to sit up, but winced. My baby." He smiled softly. "She's fine, sleeping right beside you." Tears filled her eyes instantly. She looked down at the child, touched her tiny hand, and sobbed silently. Relief and pain mixed together. Ethan turned his eyes away, giving her privacy. "You got a name?" "Clara," she whispered. "Clara Reeves. My husband. Her voice broke. "He was killed. We were heading west for work." "But," Ethan nodded. He didn't ask more. In the West, everyone carried pain, and sometimes silence was the only kindness. For the next 2 days, Clara slept, waking only to feed her baby. Ethan took care of them quietly, fetching water, cooking meals, even washing the baby's small clothes by the creek. He didn't know why he cared so much. Maybe because he saw in Clara the same emptiness he once felt, the same loneliness. By the third day, she was strong enough to step outside. The morning was cool, the sun gentle. She watched the fields, the horses grazing, the wind moving through golden grass. Ethan was fixing the fence nearby. When he noticed her, he nodded politely. "You're looking better." She smiled faintly. "Thanks to you. I don't know how to repay." "Don't need to," he interrupted. "Ain't right for a man to let a woman and her child die out here." She looked down at her bare feet, still bandaged. No one else stopped. Ethan stopped hammering, his jaw tightening. "Not everyone's got a heart left, Clara. The frontier takes it from most." There was a long silence between them, not awkward, just quiet. The kind that said more than words could. That night, after putting the baby to sleep, Clara sat by the fire while Ethan whittled a small wooden toy horse. "For her," he said, handing it over. Clara's eyes shimmered. "You're a kind man, Mr. Cole." He gave a tired smile. "Ain't kind, just doing what's right." But deep inside, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Warmth, not from the fire, but from her presence. As the wind howled outside and the desert stars burned bright above, Ethan looked at Clara and her child sleeping by the fire. He whispered to himself, almost afraid to believe it, "Maybe I ain't meant to be alone forever." The wind howled across the plains that night like an old ghost. Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, watching the flickering firelight dance across the wooden floor. Inside, Clara slept beside her baby, wrapped in a blanket he'd given her. For the first time in years, Ethan's house didn't feel empty, but peace never lasted long on the frontier. The next morning, while checking the cattle near the eastern ridge, Ethan noticed something strange: tracks, fresh ones, wagon wheels, and at least 4 horses. Not the kind of traffic that came this way. He crouched down, tracing the dust with his fingers. "They're close," he muttered. When he returned home, Clara was outside, hanging baby clothes on a rope, humming softly. Her face looked calmer, her smile fragile but real. "Clara," Ethan said carefully, "you expecting anyone to be looking for you?" Her smile faded. She froze, her hands trembling. "Why do you ask?" "I found wagon tracks near the ridge. Looked like men riding heavy." Her eyes filled with fear instantly. "They found me." Ethan stepped closer. "Who?" "My husband's employer," she whispered. "He wasn't just a farmer. He worked for a man named Jonas Creel, a land baron, ruthless. My husband found out Creel was stealing from the government, selling weapons to outlaws. When he tried to stop him, Creel had him shot. I ran with what little I could carry. My baby was born just a week later." Ethan's jaw clenched. "And now he's sending men after you?" She nodded, her voice breaking. "He wants to make sure no one ever hears what my husband saw. I thought I could get far enough away, but he always finds people." Ethan looked out at the horizon, then back at her. "Not here, he won't." That evening, Ethan prepared his rifle and loaded his shotgun. Clara tried to protest. "Please, I don't want you hurt because of me." He shook his head. "Ma'am, I've been alone too long to watch good folks die when I can stop it." He handed her a small revolver. "If they come, you hide in the root cellar. Take your baby. Don't open that door till you hear my voice." Her eyes filled with tears. "Ethan," he tipped his hat slightly, "you saved me too, Clara, just in a different way." The next morning broke with a strange stillness. Even the birds were quiet. Ethan stood near the barn, rifle in hand, eyes on the road. Then he saw them, 5 riders, black coats, guns at their sides, dust rising behind them. The man in front was tall, mean-looking, with a silver badge that wasn't law but power. Jonas Creel himself. "Morning," Creel shouted as they stopped near the gate. "Heard you got a guest staying here." Ethan didn't flinch. "I ain't got any business with you." Creel smiled thinly. "The woman's mine. She's got something that don't belong to her." Ethan tightened his grip. "She ain't property, Creel. She's under my roof and you ain't taking her." Creel laughed. "You're gonna stand between me and what's mine? You alone?" Ethan's voice was calm, cold. "Reckon one honest man's enough." The air went silent. Then a gunshot cracked. One of Creel's men fired. Ethan dove behind the fence, rolled and fired back. The man fell instantly. The battle was fast and brutal. Dust and smoke filled the yard. Ethan's bullet struck true, but he was outnumbered. He took a hit to the arm, staggered, but kept firing. Inside the house, Clara held her baby tight, trembling, praying. Then she heard footsteps on the porch. A man kicked the door open, Creel himself. Clara screamed and grabbed the revolver. "Stay back!" Creel sneered. "You think you can shoot me, little widow?" She stood firm, her baby crying behind her. "You killed my husband. I won't let you touch my child." Just as he stepped forward, a gunshot thundered through the room. Ethan stood in the doorway, his arm bleeding, eyes blazing. "Step away from her." "Creel!" Creel turned, furious. "You don't know who you're messing with."